Hi, everyone. I just wanted to give this warning at the top of the episode that we are going to be talking about subjects of what led to the demise of these musicians. So, if that is something that you are uncomfortable with and do not want to listen to, totally understand. Just wanted to give that heads up, as well as the fact that we are not experts on these musicians or their lives. We merely did research to understand their life a little bit more, as well as I did cast the charts of two of the musicians, but I did want to let people know that we are not experts and we are merely speculating. Welcome to AstroLyrical, the podcast where music meets astrology, where I, Liana Bassior, scope out the hidden astrology of up-and-coming musical artists and discover how the stars show up in their music, songs, and lyrics. I'm very excited to be recording this next episode of AstroLyrical with my best bud, my co-collaborator, one of the producers of AstroLyrical, Alana Cheuvront.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. What's
What's up?
up? I was trying to think of on the first season if you joined me for any of the episodes. I feel like you did, but maybe not.
Yes, I did.
You did?
Because I interviewed you.
That's right.
Yes. And I asked you how you got started with astrology. And we just went, through your little history and just how you became the person you are today with your knowledge of astrology and everything. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's right. That was a very sweet episode, and you did a great job hosting.
Thank you.
So I'm very excited to bring you back on for this Saturn Return Part 2.
Part 2.
Alana is very interested in the 27 Club, and she did a ton of research. So we're going to talk about that today on the show, which we gave a little bit of a preview last episode when we were talking about the Saturn Return and everything and how that connects to the 27 Club. But now Alana has done a ton of research looking into the 27 Club, the different musicians that are a part of it, and we're going to connect that back to Saturn Return because most of them were about 27 going into their Saturn return. So we're going to connect those two things. And then I'm going to actually look over a couple of the musicians' charts, talk about them a little bit, and have a conversation. I will say this episode might be slightly heavy in certain parts because we are talking about the death of a lot of these artists, their path towards that, and their really heavy life. And so if anyone feels like that is something that they cannot process at this time, I totally understand. And I just want to give you that heads up before we get going. It's a lot to take in. So it's a heavy topic, but very interesting to learn about these different artists. And I'm curious, what was your takeaway from everything that you found with the 27 Club or the musicians that were in it?
Well, it kind of goes back to, I would say, Faustian literature.
Wow.
Because that's about making a deal with the devil. And if you're not familiar with who Faust was, it was a character in the story Dr. Faustus by Christopher Marlowe, which is I think it was 1500s, I believe, 1500s or 1600s. And it's the classic story of this guy, Faust, who sells his soul to the devil to gain knowledge and experience worldly pleasures. And there has been this motif ongoing since biblical times about making a deal with the devil. Now, I'm not saying all these 27 Club members made a deal with the devil, but it seems to be that there's this theme of musicians who they make this trade-off almost where they gain fame and notoriety and worldly pleasures. But what's the price? So
Wow.
That's kind of the feeling I got from all that. But again, it's this isn't, crazy religious stuff happening. It's just a theme I see.
That's so interesting to bring Faust into it.
Yeah.
And to think of these people. I mean, yeah, the people that were in the 27 Club were very successful huge notoriety, making a statement in the world. But it
Mm-hmm.
was like almost like they couldn't handle that necessarily.
Yeah, and they were almost like the first of their kind in some ways. I mean, when you think of like Kurt Cobain and him being like the king of grunge music,
Yeah.
and then like Jimi Hendrix making that huge kickoff with the Woodstock Festival. He played the national anthem and it was huge, and then his guitar playing is amazing, and nobody's ever seen what he's done. And Janis Joplin, she was so different. And Amy Winehouse, she was very unique. So it's just wild to see what a huge impact all of these people made on music and music history.
That's really true. And I feel like I looked at the charts of Amy Winehouse and Kurt Cobain, so I'm only really referencing their astrology. But with Kurt Cobain, especially when I was looking at his Pluto, it's like, and we'll get more into the chart fully. I want to hear more about what you have to talk about with the 27 Club, but it's just such a pronounced placement for Pluto right on his ascendant. And it was like, this person is going to make a mark in the world, is a very powerful person. But with that power comes being able to know how to use it and being able to know how to control it and not give in to the imbalance that can happen when you have a lot of power. And I think a lot of people had a hard time with that.
Oh, I think all of them had.
Yeah. They all had some stuff going on with that.
Yes.
Oh my
And
gosh.
do you want to hear about the origins of the 27 Club?
I do.
Okay. So it might blow your mind a little bit.
I'm ready.
Because some people, they can only name those five.
Who are
Those
the
five
five?
main 27 Club members. So the main five are Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Kurt Cobain, and Amy Winehouse. Now, supposedly, from what I've researched, there's 24 members that are like more famous than, most musicians, but there are a ton. Like there was some international, like Brazilian musician who died at 27 in the 20s. And so anyway, the first time anybody ever talked about the 27 Club was 1969 in Rolling Stone magazine when Brian Jones died. Brian Jones was the founder of the Rolling Stones. So I'll talk about him in a bit.
Yeah.
But the one event that happened that kind of gave rise to this 27 Club, so to speak, was that of Robert Johnson. So his origins are shrouded in mystery. So it's given rise to all these stories and legends, including him meeting the devil for real.
Oh.
So Robert Johnson, although his recording career only spanned about 7 months with 29 recordings, he is recognized as one of the most influential musicians of the 20th century, a master of the blues, and perhaps the first ever actual rock star. So his poorly documented life and death have given rise to different legends and stories. The most famous story associated with him is that he sold his soul to the devil at Crossroads in Mississippi near Route 61 in return for his musical success.
Wow.
And they actually have it marked in that very crossroads with all these like guitar cutouts so people can come visit.
How did they know that? Like, how did they know that he made that deal?
I don't actually know. I
Yeah.
think that somebody, like he either pointed it out or he told somebody.
Someone documented
Because
it.
then
Yeah.
later on, Bob Dylan claims to have kind of found where it was, and he thinks he met the
Wow.
devil.
Oh my God.
But obviously, he's still with us, so
Yes.
it's okay.
I'm happy to hear or say that Bob Dylan did not have the same fate as a lot of the 27 Club.
Right. He went
So.
on to have a son, Jacob Dylan, who is the lead singer and writer of the Wallflowers. So they're fine. They're
so that
fine.
worked out good.
Thanks, Dad, for that tidbit because he loved the Wallflowers. Anyway, so so he made a deal with the devil, quote unquote. This is just speculation. So part of the rest of the story is he would jump trains. He would tour around the South playing all these local clubs. And then he was known to have kind of a belligerent way of living and being, and made a lot of people angry. But he was an amazing guitar player. So he died under mysterious circumstances. He was possibly poisoned, although his death certificate didn't really have the actual cause of death. No formal autopsy had been done.
Wow.
But one possible story was that he was poisoned by a jealous man because he was sleeping with his wife.
Oh my goodness.
Shocking.
Oh God.
And possible misuse of hoodoo was also speculated, because in the South, that was kind of the way of life down there, dark living.
Hoodoo? Do you say hoodoo?
Hoodoo, yes.
Oh.
Hoodoo, which I believe is kind of an offshoot of voodoo, but not as, intricate, and
Wow.
it's just
I've
more
never
like
heard of
devil
hoodoo.
worshipping.
Yeah.
So, however, these legends and stories, they filled the gaps of this scant record of his life, but there is a Netflix rockumentary called Remastered Devil at the Crossroads, a Robert Johnson story, where they speak with his descendants, his grandsons, and other reputable musicians like Keith Richards. And they go through his entire early life with every little detail you might be questioning. So it's an excellent documentary, keeps your interest piqued,
Wow.
especially of the Black experience in the South with musicianship. Quote I really loved and took away was this, one of the musicians, he says, "People think the blues came from the church. It came from the field." I'm like, I like that.
Yeah.
That's
beautiful. I mean, what a story though.
I know. And doesn't it gives you like the template for these musicians, or like just the curse almost. I don't want to say it's a curse, but just the theme,
It feels kind of, like there's all these similarities between people in the 27 Club. And again, there's probably astrological similarities, but in terms of, and also like maybe lifestyle, the way they were raised, who knows? But that is definitely, it seems like a theme that you found with like kind of making this deal.
Yeah, or like a trade-off. I mean,
yeah.
And then, do you want to know the other lesser-known members?
Yes.
So, Rudy Lewis of the Drifters. He was from 1950s. He pioneered rhythm and blues and gospel music. And it was, the Drifters are this singing group. So, if you've seen Home Alone, that famous scene where he, in the mirror while White Christmas is playing. That lead singer, so that's not Rudy Lewis, that's Bill Pinkney, but he's singing with the Drifters. And then Stand By Me with Ben E. King singing along as the front man. The Drifters are singing in the background. So that's Rudy Lewis. He was the first singer for them, but he was found dead in his Harlem hotel room. They were supposed to play a show.
Wow.
May 20th, 1964. Drug overdose. And then another known member who people forget about is Brian Jones, who was the founder of the Rolling Stones. He died at 27. Mick Jagger and Keith Richards took over the band's creative direction, and they're still kicking to this day. But he had developed all these alcohol and drug problems, like while they were making studio albums, and they were kind of sick of it, and they kicked him out. And then he was living at the home of the Winnie the Pooh author A.A. Milne. And then he drowned in his swimming pool.
Wow.
And that was his demise.
Oh, my God.
And then another interesting person who died at 27, Alan Christie Wilson, a.k.a. Blind Owl, who was the co-lead singer of Canned Heat. And if you know that song, I'm going up the country, babe, don't you want to come?
Oh, yeah.
That's him.
Okay.
So people don't always know about him, but acute barbiturate intoxication was the cause of death.
Yeah.
And then Mia Zapata of the punk band The Gits. She was 27 years old. This was interesting. The Seattle music community, when she had passed away, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and Soundgarden came together to help raise $70,000 to hire a private investigator for 3 years to investigate her murder. But to their dismay, there was no progress in the case for another 10 years when Jesus Mezquia was convicted in 2003 as her murderer.
Oh, wow. And that was around 27. That was at 27 too.
Yep.
Yeah.
So she is honorary member. Grunge scene before Kurt Cobain.
Yeah.
And then Randy Walker, a.k.a. Stretch. He was part of Tupac's crew. On November 30th, 1995, Walker was shot and killed at the age of 27. Tupac had recorded his 4th album, All Eyes on Me. And they have a couple... So there's speculation in the lyrics with some of these songs that he wrote, where Stretch was kind of envisioned to face this demise.
Tupac wrote those lyrics about Stretch's demise?
Yes.
Wow.
And
okay.
I think the songs are Ambitions as a Writer and Holla at Me. That's what they're speculating, but again, not set in stone.
And what's so weird is that, yes, a lot of these people died from drug overdose, alcohol overdose, all that stuff. But some of these people, like you were just saying, he got shot.
Yeah.
That
Not
wasn't
out of their control.
That was out of his control. So that is kind of odd when stuff like that happens, because that does feel.
It does feel like the universe kind of
exactly, and I hate to
you.
say that some people's plans are for that. Because it's hard to say. Like, it's hard to say what is exactly free will, what is predestined, and that's a huge conversation. But in that situation, that was not anything that he could control. So that is kind of a crazy one.
And neither for Mia,
Yeah, that too. So that's really wild.
And then the last one I want to mention, this because it's the most recent, but big in Korea. So Kim Jong-hyun, hope I'm saying that right, he's the most recent 27 Club member. He was in the K-pop band SHINee, who released 12 albums in total. And, like I kind of said before this, the Korean pop music machine is a heavy machine. So none of them really have creative control over the production of their music. And he was the first one to truly break away and make his music his own. And he had sadly succumbed at the age of 27 to cardiac arrest. But he had hinted to those close to him that he probably would take his own life. But this is just... again, speculation.
So there wasn't any drug or alcohol involvement in his case? Or, it was cardiac arrest, so there was some other health issue, it sounds like.
Yeah, well, I think because he brought it upon himself, sadly. But his final album came out, and it's called Poet, I Artist, in January 2018, where you can listen to his solo music. And... yeah, that's kind of the background and fun facts about 27 Club members that you probably didn't know about.
I had no idea the extent of, there's 22, like you said.
Yeah, well, probably more
now.
More than that. Because who can say fame? There's so many different musicians that we don't know about. And
we were talking about earlier, Mac Miller and,
yeah.
Coming up. There's just, it seems like, and that's the thing. This is what we were talking about last episode with the Saturn Return. It is challenging. We were talking about how it's really a time where you have to take responsibility for the choices you've already made.
Yeah.
And if you don't, and if you can't look at it and be real with yourself and be like, okay, this was the path I was on, doesn't work for me anymore, I need to make a change. If you don't do that, and if you just don't do the work that is required, whether it's psychological work, physical work, whatever you need to do for yourself.
Intuitive work,
spiritual work, whatever it is, it's like hard to handle it.
Yep.
And sadly, I think that for a lot of these people, they were not equipped, whether it was their upbringing, whether it was other circumstances in their life, whether it was, just getting addicted to drugs and alcohol. It was the fame, it was the power, it was the going from maybe being a, very, not a nobody, but not someone that people would know, to then instantly like a huge amount of like, just like people with their eyes on them. With Amy Winehouse, I think that the time when she was coming into this fame was huge with paparazzi. Remember? I mean, we were alive at that time, like the 2000s. And that they were vicious, especially towards women.
Yeah.
And you can see it through a lot of people, like Britney Spears, sadly. Like, I mean, I'm glad she's okay and she's alive, but like they just attacked women, young women, and in that time of the 2000s.
Even like Janis Joplin, I mean, they were like saying stuff about like, oh, her looks, she's not as pretty as these other musicians and other famous women, and it was awful. And then putting a little microscope on her too. But
so imagine being vulnerable. You're trying to find your way in your 20s. You get to your Saturn return. You're figuring it out. You've got pressure from all these angles, and you just can't handle it. You just can't handle it. So it's really hard, and it's really sad that for whatever reason they didn't have those tools, and like we were saying earlier, like therapy and other ways of healing weren't as much. And even now, it's like you were talking about with the K-pop singer. Like he was in this time, but like he still didn't like have maybe the help he needed.
I mean, it's like tortured artist.
From what I saw, I did a little research on 2 of the main 5. I looked at the charts of Kurt Cobain, and I looked at Amy Winehouse's charts.
Those are
2
good ones because I mean they're the most recent, so there's more to look at with their charts, but also they made such huge impacts on music. At least, Actually, fun fact, so Amy Winehouse died on my 21st birthday.
That's what you said. Yeah, July 23rd.
And it kept me from drinking for a long time. And obviously I was sad too because I was a fan of hers.
Yeah.
And but I'm so interested to hear like how their charts are similar. But who are you gonna do first, Kurt Cobain?
Let's start with Kurt Cobain. Yeah, he was the one that I looked up first. And like I've said, it's like a lot of times with musicians, there's a lot of Piscean energy, which is hard. Like the 12th house energy we've talked about, Pisces energy we've talked about, Neptune energy. That is an energy which makes incredible musicians. They're amazing artists. They're able to channel things and download things and put them into music and take what... It's amazing because like a Piscean person can feel so much from everyone else. So in a way, they can express like what the collective is feeling or what other people are feeling.
And you said that Kurt had like how many planets in Pisces?
Kurt has a lot of Pisces energy, and no wonder he had such a hard time, to be fair. Like
a lot of water.
a ton of water, not just even Pisces. He has his sun in Pisces. But then he has his moon in Cancer. And it was so interesting. We were just watching, before we started recording, a little snippet of the documentary about Kurt Cobain. And in it, they were talking about how all he really wanted was family. He wanted this family unit. And when I was doing a little research about him, it's just really sad. Like, again, these people come out and they're born. And it's like they're just here and they're trying to make their way in the world. And then a lot of circumstances happen that make it hard, just like they do for all of us. But for him, he, from what I read, he was a very happy child. He was very artistic, very imaginative, all this stuff. And his parents were married. And then at 9 years old, his parents got divorced. And it rocked his world. It just shut everything. And he was really angry. And they both remarried. His mother remarried to a man who was abusive. And Kurt was very angry about that. And his father remarried to a woman who I think at first there was an okay relationship, but then his father and his stepmother had another child. And I think there was a lot of resentment of that child for Kurt because he kind of felt like, this is not my family. I want my mom and dad to be together. Now they have another baby. Like, what's going on here? So that built up a lot in him. And he was a sensitive child, and he's got that moon in Cancer. Cancer is a sign that wants to be nurtured. It wants to be taken care of. It wants to be like a home and a family. You know, you have your Venus in Cancer, right?
Oh, yes.
So you understand, like, it's like that Cancerian energy just wants to feel secure and taken care of. And it's like at 9 years old, his world was rocked. His home, literally the Cancer, like moon in Cancer, moon rules Cancer. So it's like such a strong position.
Yeah.
And his home base was just totally taken apart. You know, he got into high school. I think a lot of people gave him a hard time. He's floating around. And that's the thing is like with all that Piscean energy, it's like you can't really harness that energy. They kind of just float and they are kind of, they're all over. So they don't really necessarily have like a certain binary type way of living.
It's like water without a container.
It is.
Or the ocean.
It's fog. That's what I've always connected it to is this fog energy. But what can happen with that is it can create a very foggy mind and a very confused mind. And not only does he have that sun in Pisces, the moon in Cancer, he's got about 3 other main planets in Pisces. Saturn, like we're talking about, the planet of work, fear, restriction, worry, anxiety. He's got Venus, so his love language. Oh, such like a sensitive guy. Chiron, which is an asteroid, but that's all about your hurt and healing. And then Mercury, how you express and think and communicate.
He has Mercury in Pisces too?
That's what I mean. He was extremely sensitive, extremely Piscean. And he's got Neptune in Scorpio in the 3rd house, which is the house of the mind, which can create a lot of disillusion. It can create a lot of like not knowing really what reality is, depression. So, I mean,
like
this guy came in with a difficult path from the get-go. And I think, you know, he has all that Piscean energy in the 7th house. So it's all about one-to-one relationship. It opposed all that Piscean energy, opposed Pluto and Uranus. So I think he had a lot of tension with his one-to-one relationships, wanting that type of love, wanting that type of partnership, but also feeling like he has Uranus on his ascendant, ruling the 1st house. So it's like he had a rebellion and like a need for freedom. But I think it came a lot from just not getting the nurturing he needed as a kid, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I can kind of, you know, because my dad was a Pisces.
Yeah.
So, and he was a musician. But of course, he I think was also a moon in Cancer.
Oh,
which is so wild.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I identify so much with this because he was a musician.
Yeah.
So moon in Cancer, sun in Pisces. Not sure about his ascendant because he didn't have his birth time.
Oh, right. So yeah, you don't know what house and everything.
Rural Ohio, but I identify because he had kind of a broken home too, and so I feel that frustration, and he would take it out with his music. Yes. So, but he had kind of a more structured chart, I would say, because he was, you know, he worked very hard and, you know, raised us and everything. But like I feel like I saw so much of like pieces of Kurt in him, dealing with all those frustrations growing up.
Oh man.
But, you know, obviously poor Kurt.
Kurt didn't.
You know.
And that's the thing is that I think it was interesting because he's a Virgo rising and he has his sun and Mercury actually right in the 6th house, which is the house of Virgo. So it's interesting because it's like he had all, I mean, really mostly water in his chart actually now, like Mars is in Scorpio, Neptune is in Scorpio, Jupiter is in Cancer, Moon is in Cancer. I mean, he mostly was water. Like, I mean, so no wonder. Like, he just couldn't handle the emotions that were coming up. But it's interesting because he had his sun and Mercury and his rising in an earth in Earth placements. So it's like there was this like deeper part of him that could connect to the Earth, and his North Node actually, what it was in Taurus, Earth sign, in the 8th house, Scorpio. So finding grounding within his emotions. He can still have all those emotions and feelings and everything, but it's like, how do I find grounding? How do I find practicality? How do I find a container, like you said, for all this watery, emotional energy? And it was interesting because, so I looked at his natal chart. So that's a little bit about his natal chart. And he actually has a grand trine now that I'm looking at it, which basically trines are an aspect in a natal chart that is about kind of an energy that's a helpful energy.
Yes.
Like squares are difficult. If you have a square in your chart or an opposition, that can be a challenge.
Yes.
But a trine is like a gift. And it's interesting because he has a grand trine actually with Neptune in Scorpio, Jupiter in Cancer, and I believe it's kind of a mix of the Venus and Chiron in Pisces. So he has a water trine, basically. And it's like, in a way, that's like a really helpful element. But I just don't think he was able, I mean, he was doing the work through his music and getting it all out through his music and being being this amazing leader in this grunge world for all of his anger and frustrations. But then it's like he couldn't handle the other side of that. And he wasn't able to find the grounding, the earthiness that he needed to within the power and the, the feelings he felt and the touring, the music. It's like he couldn't find it. So it's pretty crazy. And I was actually looking at, so I pulled a transit chart to look at the day he died, April 5th, 1994, with his natal chart, February 20th, 1967. So I could look and see where his Saturn was. And so his Saturn, so he was, 27, like we said, but his Saturn was actually, it wasn't directly like right linked up, like I was saying in the first episode, usually a Saturn return, a full return takes about 29 years, 29.5 years. So it wasn't there yet. It was actually, it was getting there. It was in Pisces, but it wasn't quite there yet. And what's so interesting about both his chart and Amy's chart is that, so I did the same thing with Amy Winehouse, and we'll get into her stuff too. But what I did was with the transits of when they died, both of them were not quite there with their full return. But what happened was that both the Saturns, when they were transiting, went into a retrograde period after the day they died. Then it went direct again. So what this is saying to me is that not only were they about to go into a Saturn return, or maybe already feeling that, but then each of those Saturns were going to go into a retrograde, which was going to even require them to go even deeper and do more work and do more internalization than it was already going to do.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
So it's kind of like a cycle that ends before like the real deep work can begin.
At least with these two, I didn't look up the other 27 Club people and their Saturns, but with these two cases, it was like this thing of like they were already feeling the energy of Saturn return. Then it was going to go retrograde, which is like, we've talked about retrogrades. Like when there's a retrograde of any planet, you have to do a lot of deep internal work. Even more so than you normally do. So it's like they were needing to really pull on that and trust that they were going to be okay.
Yeah.
But they didn't have the basic tools to be able to do that, and then relied on...
They were just being genius musicians.
And like, and then resulted in other things. So
wow.
That was a really interesting thing. So for him, he died on April 5th, 1994. Saturn went retrograde June 23rd, 1994. It went direct November 9th, 1994. And then Saturn made its exact return, meaning it exact, what's the degrees here? He's got Saturn at 28 degrees. So it made its exact 28 degrees on March 22nd, 1996. So 2 years after he died, that would have been the exact. And it's not like it would be over, but it's like it would be kind of, getting less in energy after that.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, you just think, oh man, I wish they could have just done that and lived to get through their Saturn return, because probably if they would have been able to get through that, they would have been okay. Hi, guys. I just wanted to take a pause outside of the episode to give everyone a little bit of a break from what we're talking about. I know that all this information is a lot to absorb, but I hope you're enjoying it. And if you would like to learn more about astrology or any other information with it, you can go to my website, LiliRoseAstrology.com. Enjoy the episode.
Let's talk about Amy.
Oh my gosh, Amy. And she just like, I just love her music so much. And I always sing Back to Black.
You always sing it at karaoke.
Oh, and Valerie.
Yeah, that's your girl.
She is my girl. So it was really sad looking at her story too. But
what are her main planets?
Okay, so it's interesting because she has a very different chart.
Oh, okay.
That's the interesting with her. She doesn't have as much water in her chart. She's actually a Virgo sun. she's actually a Virgo sun. She's a Capricorn moon. We've talked a little bit about Capricorn moons, or maybe more so in personal life. I've talked about Capricorn moons, but that can be a challenge. That can be a challenge, and I'll tell you kind of where that I see some challenges in here too. But it's Virgo sun, Capricorn moon, Gemini rising. And it's interesting because both Kurt and Amy, we're talking about asteroids, and both of them have Chiron in a mutable sign.
Okay.
She has it in Gemini. Kurt had it in Pisces. Mutable energy is a hard energy to pin down. And especially for Amy in Gemini, it's like your mind is like, thinking of a million things going on at the same time. And she has that in the 12th house, which is the Pisces house. So here we are. She doesn't necessarily have a lot of water, but she has that still 12th house Piscean energy where her Chiron is all about wounding and where you need to be healed. So there's a lot of wounding and healing within her 12th house, which is the house of everything behind the scenes. It's your dreams. It's your subconscious. So her life, she may have come in with a lot of wounding and hurt already. Yeah. Even before she got started. And what's interesting with her is she also has a lot of energy in her 7th house, just like Kurt. Really interesting, very relational, very much the relationship is the important thing. But with him, it was like his path was more finding grounding and stabilization within his relationships, within his emotions, all the stuff. For her, she has the moon in Capricorn conjunct Neptune. Here we are with Neptune again. So moon conjunct Neptune. That is a tough placement because that's like what we're talking about. A lot of mental confusion, a lot of disillusion, a lot of not really knowing what reality is, especially within your relationships.
And pressure.
A lot of pressure.
Capricorn's kind of the pressure cooker.
Well, that's very true. And I think Capricorn really does, like, it's grounding and it's like, hey, this is what I need, my boundaries. But I think she on one hand was like, here, these are my boundaries. And then it's also like, but wait, I have no boundaries because I have a Neptune conjunct moon. Whew. Okay. So, and on top of that, the Neptune aspect was conjunct her south node in a 6-degree orb, a little bit of a farther away thing, but still it was like there was a south node energy, meaning the energy you're coming from, what you're trying to find balance with within her relationships, having a lot of disillusion with that, trying to find herself because her north node is in the 1st house in Gemini, trying to find herself within like what she needs in her life instead of what the partner needs. And I know that from the research I did about her, it's like there was a lot of, I think her upbringing was slightly less chaotic, although I think a real turning point for her and when I think she started to go downhill a little bit was when her grandmother died. And that was when she was a little bit older, but I think that the grandmother must have been a really strong female figure for her. And then after that, again, what we're talking about, life, fame, the music, the power, the pressure to be at your peak level all the time. I think that just got to her. And on top of it all, she was in relationships, which were challenging, and so similar. She just got into a really difficult spot. And then when her Saturn returned, same thing with Kurt, like I said, her Saturn was not near her natal Saturn when she died, but it was on its way to making its return.
Ooh.
So similar, she died. She died July 23rd. Saturn went retrograde, and then it went direct. And then the exact Saturn return was about like a year later, a little over a year later. So she too had a difficult path where, I think that the goal in her life was to find more of like a direction for herself rather than for the partner. But I think she had a hard time with that. She also, when she died, had a Sun square Saturn. Like when she died, like
That sounds painful.
it was uncomfortable for sure, It's about like reflecting on the truth, focusing on like the decisions and like how to express yourself through those decisions and like taking on obstacles. So it's like she was already in a place where it's like there was work that needed to be done. And she, like Kurt, could not do the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so tragic.
It's really tough. So with both these situations, it makes me sad because it's like I can see with both of these people how they came into this world with these gifts.
Mm-hmm.
Like we talked about, the gifts of like you're meant to do this thing, and it's like what you were bringing up at the beginning. Was that gift with a deal? Like, was there a deal with this gift when they were born? Was this the karmic path that was meant to happen? Or was it that they were meant to stray away from that and come into their own so that they could have these gifts and share it and then be able to get through this hard stuff too?
I mean, astrology, there's still free will.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
That's sort of the mythological part of just being a musician.
Well, and I think it's interesting because with Amy, I think she was trying to get sober.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a lot of in and out of, and, go to rehab, the song Rehab.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think she truly was trying to get sober. And I think with Kurt, it kind of seemed like more of a spiral downhill.
Yeah.
Like I think Courtney Love did take him to a detox center. This was like kind of soon before he died. Oh. And then he checked out and he took a plane and he went to Seattle and he died in his home.
Wow.
An electrician found him. Like, I mean, that's the thing, but it's like, so it's each person is so different with their battle within themselves.
Yeah.
Some people are so deeply wounded that they literally can't even try to get help or don't want to get help. And some people are wounded, but like they're trying. And that's what's really sad is that when they try, but they just ultimately can't fight that battle. And, like people say, I believe in AA, it's like, it's a disease. These kind of things are diseases. So anyways, it's pretty wild.
Well, it's amazing what you found astrologically. Because, the more that you study astrology or the more that you can kind of find the definitions for the different placements, different planets and what they mean, and then you can kind of see these similarities in these people's charts. So not that it's anything like these tragic deaths are not predestined, but it depends on so many other factors. But it's still amazing to see, especially that Piscean energy, which is like the musician energy.
Yeah. The downloading energy, the channeling.
Yes.
He was incredible with that. Yeah.
But then again, it's like you have no earthly bounding to kind of anchor that.
And that's the thing. That was his path. And I don't know if he really knew that. And I don't know. I mean, it's hard. Unless you know your chart, it's hard to know that. But I don't know if maybe internally he knew that he needed to make a change, but he just couldn't.
There's probably some little voice, but
Yeah.
It's like how, there's these things where these interviews, Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison, pieces of Janis Joplin, and they kind of hint at, I don't know if I'm going to make it. Or
that's bonkers to me. It's like they already know.
And in a way, not to harp on manifestation, but when you say things sometimes they come true, and you have to be careful. And,
well, and it's kind of like giving up in a way. And Saturn is not about giving up. Saturn is about doing the hard work so that you don't give up, so that you persevere. And that is, I mean, everything we talked about today really shows how important it is to do the work so that you can have a successful Saturn return and you can get through it. And maybe you're upset, maybe it's hard, maybe you do have like really difficult thoughts, but you can trust that you'll get through it okay. You'll be okay at the end of this, you know?
Oh, for sure.
So.
Well, that was such a crazy, awesome deep dive in the musicians.
Yeah, thank you.
So cool to learn, especially those two. They're like, you know, I don't want to say extreme examples of 27 Club members, but like the most recent and very profound examples of music for our day and age.
Well, thank you for all of the information and research you did into kind of the lineage of the 27 Club. That was like super fascinating.
Yeah.
And I had no idea there was anything with the devil involved. Not that,
the
you know.
Devil's everywhere.
Devil's everywhere. No, but that was really cool. So.
Yeah, and watch the documentaries.
Yeah.
There's a documentary about Amy Winehouse. There's a documentary called, I believe it's called Montage of Heck for Kurt Cobain. And then the Crossroads documentary on Netflix about Robert Johnson, who is supposedly the first rock star.
Yeah, there's a lot of different places you can watch this stuff. So make sure you check it out and make sure that, you know, let us know what you felt about this episode. Please email us. You can write reviews. You can comment in our Instagram or message us. Let us know what you think. And I'm really interested to hear people's experiences with their Saturn returns, because this is a deep subject and a hard subject. And I hope that this segment, the first part we did last episode, and this part really helps. And, you know, we continue on. We keep going on. And you and I will have another Saturn return at 56. So we'll keep doing it.
Yay.
But thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. And we will catch you on the flip side.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. This podcast has been a LiliRose production, created by Liana Bassior, produced by Juliana Hartman, Danielle Marascalchi, and Alana Cheuvront. Audio by John Neisen. Stay tuned for next week's episode, where we dive into another musician's chart and explore their music.